In the city where wealth is a religion, 3 women ruled without sharing. They had everything: money, power, respect. But their secrets were hidden in the shadows. Husbands turned into silver machines, lives linked to invisible forces, until the day they woke up, and what had started as a pact became a revenge. This time, they will pay the price. The city of Lekomon shone under the midday sun. The wide roads lined with palm trees led to luxurious neighborhoods where white villas with red roofs stood up like monuments of success. In these streets where each gate wore a golden coat, the names Amara, Chinwe, and Salma were on everyone's lips. Amara, the wife of the famous banker, embodied elegance. Her ivory tailors, her discreet but priceless jewels, and her measured smile made her the perfect image of the accomplished woman. She was often seen early in the morning, taking the wheel of her sparkling black SUV, her sunglasses concealing a cold and calculating gaze. Chinwe, she was the bravest. Her fashion show, Divine Shapes, did not disappoint. It was said that she had a gift to transform dreams into reality, dressing the most influential women in the city. At each event, she made people turn their heads with her tailored dresses and bold hairstyles. And then there was Salma, the youngest, barely 30 years old, but already at the head of an impressive fortune thanks to her husband's real estate business. Beautiful, ambitious, always surrounded by cameras during her charity work, she represented the golden youth of Lekomon. However, behind the closed doors of their villa, a much darker truth was brewing. These women would meet every Thursday night in an isolated house outside the city, a villa that no one dared approach, protected by huge gates and silent guards. Inside, under the trembling light of the candles, she formed a perfect circle around a priestess dressed in red. Her black eyes, piercing like blades, seemed to read in their souls. They were called Mama Ibele. "You know what you want, my daughters," she said in a hoarse voice that resonated in the room, "and you know the price." They paid without a word, because in this secret sanctuary, ambition had no limits, and every Thursday a new pact was sealed. Their husbands, they ignored everything. They woke up the next day tired, sometimes empty, but without suspecting that in the night, something invisible had fed on their energy. They transformed them into real success machines. In the streets of Lekomon, they murmured about their insolent luck. No one could have imagined that behind the smiles, behind the glasses of champagne and the photos in the magazines, an invisible thread connected these women. In the shade, success first came like a gentle rain after a long dry season. For Amara, it all started when a big foreign investor signed almost by miracle a partnership with her husband's bank. In less than 6 months, their income tripled. She changed cars, replaced her black SUV with a white Bentley, and bought a secondary villa on the coast. At every reception, she shone a little more, smiling with this calm look of a woman who knows that she reigns without sharing. Chinwe, she saw her fashion show become a real institution. Celebrities traveled from other countries to be dressed by her. The orders flowed to the point that she opened 2 new shops in the most busiest neighborhoods. Her husband, until then a small fabric importer, signed unimaginable contracts. The couple became essential in the business circles. As for Salma, she became the coqueluche of social networks. Her husband's real estate deals reached new heights: luxury buildings, prestigious land, complex hotels. At 30 years old, she already owned what others would never have in several lives. She smiled in front of the cameras, her hands covered with sparkling rings, while playing philanthropy with her charity foundations. But if the villas shone, the husbands, they went out little by little. They worked relentlessly, as if pushed by an invisible force. The banker of Amara spent entire night at the office, signing documents without even understanding why he could not stop. Chinwe's husband went on trips, his eyes closed like those of an insomniac. As for Salma's entrepreneur, he came back late in the night soaked in sweat, his eyes empty, but the bank account always fuller. Sometimes they had strange absences. They woke up in the morning with discrete marks on the skin, like fine scratches or light bronze. They put it on the fatigue account. The women, they smiled. They knew, because every Thursday night they returned to this isolated villa. Under the incantations of Mama Ibele, they offered pieces of fabric belonging to their husband, hair strands or recent photos. The flames of the candles were dancing, the drums were resonating gently, and the pact was strengthening. "As long as you feed them," repeated Mama Ibele, with this enigmatic smile, "they will produce without stopping. They are your pillars, your sources, your machines. But remember, Each machine must be maintained, and they maintained. They never missed a Thursday. Never. In the streets of Lekomon, the rumors were incessant. Some murmured that the rich of the three women had nothing natural. Others claimed to have seen strange shadows near their villa at nightfall, but no one dared to speak too loudly. The city continued to acclaim them, but in the intimacy of their beloved villa, something had changed. Husbands, formerly dynamic and charismatic, seemed more and more empty. Amara's banker, formerly discreet but warm, had turned into a machine. He spent his evenings locked in his office, staring at his computer, signing contracts without even understanding their content. Sometimes Amara found him standing motionless in the bedroom, his eyes open in the middle of the night, as if he were listening to a voice that only he could hear. Chinwe's husband himself had begun to forget things, important dates, birthdays, sometimes even the names of his own children. One evening, as she was waiting for him for dinner, he arrived covered in sweat, his eyes wide open. "I feel like I'm being followed," he murmured before falling asleep, exhausted on the couch, without food. At Salma's, the discomfort took on a different form. Her husband, the strong, solid man, the one she had always admired, was now starting to speak in her sleep. Incomprehensible sentences, sometimes screams. One night, she heard distinctly, "Let me go, I beg you." In the early morning, when she tried to question him, he remembered nothing. The relatives began to notice. Amara's mother, on a visit, observed her son-in-law's livid complexion and whispered to her, "My daughter, your husband no longer has the same light in his eyes." But Amara swept away the worry with a cold laugh. "It's work, Mom. You know the bank never sleeps." Yet the signs multiplied. Objects moving alone in the houses, murmurs in the corridors, dead birds found in the gardens every Friday morning like an invisible offering. And then there was this incident. Chinwe's husband collapsed in the middle of a business meeting. Transported urgently to the hospital, the doctors concluded to a simple fatigue. But one of the security guards swore to have heard him scream before falling, "Leave me alone. Get out of my head." The three women that night found themselves in Mama Ebele's villa. "Are you afraid?" asked the priestess, her dark eyes shining in the darkness. Chinwe hesitated. He began to notice. Mama Ebele sketched a cold smile. "He doesn't notice anything. They are yours, and as long as you listen to me, they will stay. But if you start to doubt, if you weaken, then everything will collapse." Everything, she swore. And the ritual continued, even more intense than the previous ones. But deep down, a worry began to arise, because she felt that something, somewhere, was escaping them. The women thought they mastered the game. They followed the rituals to the letter every Thursday, without ever missing a single appointment in Mama Ebele's villa. Yet, over the weeks, they felt that something was escaping them. The husbands had become real machines to produce. Amara's banker looped impossible transactions, generating astronomical profits. The investors rushed to his doors as if guided by an invisible force. But he didn't smile anymore. He didn't speak anymore. His eyes were often lost in the void, as if he were looking for an exit in an invisible labyrinth. Chinwe's husband signed contracts all over Africa. His companies grew so fast that the newspapers called him the man of gold. But at home, he walked like a shadow, speaking little, sleeping even less. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, he would sit on the edge of the bed, short breath, repeating, "I don't feel my heart. I don't feel my heart." As for Salma, she lived in a suffocating luxury. Villas, hotels, cars, everything she had dreamed of. But her husband, the one she proudly showed to her friends, was nothing more than the shadow of himself. He hardly ate anymore. He never laughed. And sometimes he looked at Salma as if he didn't recognize her. His eyes were full of a mute fear. In the streets of Lekoma, rumors were spreading. Their husbands are cursed. They have sold their souls. These women, they are not normal. But no neighbor dared to get too close. And then the supernatural signs became more violent. In Amara's house, mirrors were breaking for no reason.
In Chinwe's house, housewives claim to have heard murmurs in the corridors, voices whispering prayers in an ancient language. In Salma's house, the animals of the garden mysteriously died, their bodies found at the foot of the staircase. They talked about it to Mama Ibili. "All this is nothing," she said in a glacial voice. "Each pact attracts the shadow, but the shadow protects you, my daughters. It works for you." And they believed it. They closed their eyes on the marks getting deeper and deeper, on the arms of their husbands, on their fatigue, on their nightmares. But at the end of each month, the numbers were rising again. The villas were getting bigger, the jewelry was shining more, and the newspapers incensed them like models of success. But in the silence of their rooms, fear began to germinate.
Everything changed overnight. Chinwe's husband woke up with a runny nose, soaked in sweat. In his dream, he saw his wife, dressed in a red dress, standing in a dark room, surrounded by candles. She sang in a language he did not know, while a dark silhouette caressed his face. He felt his heart beating, and for the first time, he understood that it was not a simple nightmare. The same evening, at the other end of the coma, Amara's banker stopped in front of the mirror in their room. On his neck, just below the line of his hair, he noticed a dark mark resembling a symbol traced with a knife. His breath stopped. He had no memory of an injury, and yet this mark was burning, as if to remind him of a truth he still refused to accept. As for Salma's husband, he began to hear murmurs, not in his dreams, no, in the middle of the day, in his office, on the construction site, while driving, deep voices repeating to him, "Wake up, wake up." It was at this moment that they met Baba Karim, a discreet old man known in the city for his ancient knowledge. It was Chinwe's driver who approached him first, worried about the state of his boss. Baba Karim gathered the three of them in a small room on the riverbank. "Your wives have bound you," he said without hesitation, his eyes folded by time. "They have made of you pillars, sources. As long as the link remains, they feed on your strength, and everything you touch becomes gold for them." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Amara's banker, his fists clenched, murmured in a broken voice, "Them, they used us as slaves, but you can free yourself," Baba Karim added. "And even better, you can reverse the link, make it so that it becomes your sources." A glow of rage shone in their eyes. It was no longer just a question of freedom, it was a question of revenge. The following days, they simulated ignorance. They smiled at their wives, continued their routine, but every night they found themselves in Baba Karim's box. They learned incantations, precise gestures, ancient words, and little by little, the symbols engraved on their bodies lost their intensity. They felt the energy return, like a new heat in their veins. Then came Thursday, the day of the weekly ritual. But this time, things didn't go as planned. When Mama Ebele invoked the shadow, she felt a blockage, a resistance. Her eyes folded, her hands trembled. "Something has changed," she murmured, but it was already too late. The husbands were now awake, and for the first time, they held the strings. The shift was almost invisible. The women didn't realize anything at first. The husbands, who had become attentive and charming again, offered them smiles they hadn't seen in years. They asked questions, took interest in their day, brought flowers, jewels. Amara, Chinwe, and Salma believed that everything was in order. They didn't realize that every night, while they were sleeping deeply, their husbands recited the incantations learned from Baba Karim, sealing a new bond, an inverted bond. Then the first signs appeared. For Amara, it was fatigue, a strange tiredness that weighed her down from morning to night. Even the most expensive massages didn't soothe her. She sometimes fell asleep in the middle of a conversation, exhausted for no reason. Chinwe, she noticed her sudden losses. Her shops, known for their success, saw the customers leave one by one. Her bank accounts began to empty mysteriously, while her husband's affairs reached heights never seen before. As for Salma's entrepreneur, he signed unimaginable contracts, raising their family fortune to unreachable levels. But this prosperity now had a price: paid by the women. Their silhouettes weakened. Their splendors disappeared. They lost this aura of power that had made them untouchable. And when they returned, panicked, in Mama Ebele's villa, the priestess understood immediately. They have returned the link to you, she spat out, furious. You are now their offering, and as long as they feed the circle, you will be mere shells. Panic seized her. They tried to break the ritual, to beg their husband, to reconnect with the priestess, but it was too late. Every attempt to regain control turned against her. In the streets of the Ekoma, the murmur changed. There was no longer talk of the 3 women, but of the 3 men who had become in a few months living legends. And in the silence of their room, the fallen wives were crying, prisoners of a pact they had created themselves. The last scene was that of Amara, one evening, sitting alone in her villa, watching her husband celebrate a new contract. In her eyes, there was no more anger, just the frozen terror of having understood that she had lost. But in the shadows, Mama Ebele, she was smiling, because in the game of spirits, nothing ever really ends.